Hey everyone, welcome back to Rhythm Railroad. This is update number 13 of my HO scale layout. This update is going to be basically based around a bunch of things that are happening at the same time, and also things that I've had to jump ahead to in order to solve other issues, or because I have things that are not even related to this layout happening in the basement that I need to get around. So we'll get to that in just a bit. But what I wanted to show you here is that I've actually laid the track across the gap here. As you know, right in front of the staircase here, there's going to be sheetrock that's going to be concealing a small section of track for all of the crossing tracks that are going through. So I wanted to make sure that that was finished so I can get onto the second level. I also wanted to have the height of the second level at 20 inches. And as we climb up from the previous section here, we've been climbing basically from the other side of the room at 2% to get to the second level here. So it actually flattens out right here. But this is 18 inches. So what I did is I made the rest of the climb here. This way, you know, it's going to be concealed anyway, so you won't notice it as bad. But either way, it's just a little bit over 2%. So no big deal. I haven't wired this up yet, so I don't know how the locomotives are going to behave, but I'm assuming it's going to be fine because this is about the same grade, so I think it'll behave the same way there, and it had no issues whatsoever. I have 30 cars on the string here, and the reason I have that is because in the previous video I was trying to figure out how many I could fit into this siding or future siding, which I was working on. But I wanted to here's another thing. So I wanted to get the train out of the way because it was kind of stuck here so that I can work out the rear track or the siding track. So this way I wouldn't be knocking things over or whatever. So now that I have it, you know, past the turnout, I can work much freer and without any problems. So yeah, so that's what's happening here. I have, you know, the turnout in place. It's all glued down, ready to go. It's got the tortoise machine. I mounted this one sideways, and I'm using kind of like one of those, I don't know what you call it. It's where it's like a cantilever, I guess, where it's moving side to side, and there's a pin that goes down. So the tortoise is actually moving this way, and it's pivoting this way, which causes that hook to kind of go like that. So it's pulling right at that joint there. I did take the spring out of this, so it'll move slowly like the real turnouts. I did not take it out of this one, partly because I forgot, but the other part was that I wasn't sure if the slow motion thing was going to be a good situation. You know, you keep going back and forth a lot of times. So I left this one in, but if I want to take it out in the future, it'll, you know, I think you could just cut it, or I can somehow get it out of there. If anybody has any good suggestions for Pico turnouts on how to get the spring out once everything is glued and laid down already, let me know. But I did also mount the turnout here. I was pleasantly surprised that the tortoise machine didn't stick out as far as I thought it would. I thought it was going to be much lower. So it's actually the size of the 1x3, which is nice because once I put the fascia here, you won't even see it. I mean, you really have to dip down. I'm like ducking down to do that. But normally this is where I would be standing. So there's no way I'm going to be able to see that from the sight line for most people. So yeah, so all I got to do now is just finish the track on the inside here. For the siding, I am going to add a turnout here for the spur that's going to go into the industry that's going to be sitting right back there. But otherwise, everything is ready to go. I just got to basically lay down track all the way through, down to the turnout I just showed you before. So that's it for this. I did install the turnout here as well, because obviously, you know, I wanted to make sure it was in so that I can get the rest of that track in. So This is a number 8. I decided to go with a longer turnout here, so that I wouldn't, so that if the train came in at high speeds, it wouldn't jerk over to the left if it had to go into this track here. So it'll be a smoother transition. I thought maybe I should get a 10, but I think a 10 is overkill. I think an 8 is plenty smooth, and you know, it won't be such a big deal. So I did start the siding track here. And just the reason I'm waiting on the rest of the track is because I'm not sure where I'm going to put the spurs for the industries that are going to sit outside of this. So all the industries are going to be in front of the train while the main goes in the back. I did that for a few reasons. Number one, because I wanted the weight to go as far against the wall as possible, you know, with the Homasote. It is heavy, and there's eight pieces of spline there, so it's, you know, it's a lot of weight. So I have that tied into the cleat back there, all the bench work that I did back there, and it's very, very stiff, so it's not going to go anywhere. And then the lighter stuff is going to go on the outside. Now, the other reason for having the industries on the outside is because I want to be able to work here, you know, where I have to flip switches and do whatever on a couple of cars, and not have to worry about the train interrupting all that. So it's going to be in the back. And the last reason is I like the way it looks when there's stuff in the way of the scene. So you can see it almost gives you like depth. So when the train's coming through and there's like a building in the way or whatever, I like the way that looks. It's just me. Not that it's going to be like very busy here, but there's going to be some industries that are going to be in front of the train, the main line. Moving on, this I made a lot of progress here. I did make this corner. I did all the bench work, all the supporting brackets, and anything that needed to be put in to kind of push the Homasote away. So all that is done. The only reason I stopped is because I haven't finished the corner bench work, and because of that, I don't want to put too much of the Homasote in, because then I have to keep moving it out of the way for me to drill and work back there. And for the same reason, I stopped the Homasote screwing here, because if I keep going, I'm not going to have the ability to pull the Homasote away, which I'm going to have to do right now, because I can only get 3 or 4 pieces with a nice big, 3-inch screw or 2.5-inch screw to tie into the wood. So I need to get that in first before I add the rest of the Homasote, because that gets tied into this section of Homasote. So in other words, this has to happen first, then this, for it to work. I can't get like, a 6-inch screw or something like that. It's too much. Plus it starts to get, it's hard to get all of those pieces of spline perfectly level. So it's better to work in sections, and you end up with more screws. So even though you only see, a screw every 4 inches or so, there's actually screws in between, but deeper. So it's a lot more rigid as it goes through. So that's why I stopped here. Obviously the cork, you can't continue either. So backing up, the reason I also stopped is because I ran out of wood. So I just went to Lowe's actually a few hours ago and picked up a few more 1x3s that are going to complete the connection to that point there. There is going to be a slight, very, very slight, it's only a 1/4 inch climb here, because when I planned all this, I didn't take into consideration there's going to be plywood on top of this. It's actually a 1/2 inch. I shouldn't say a 1/4 inch. It's a 1/2 inch climb. So, once I put the plywood here, it'll stiffen this up. And I am going to see if I can somehow brace it to the pole here, maybe with like metal strapping or something. And for now, I have a piece of wood, like a 1x, it's just a small, thin piece of wood here, just to kind of give it a little support here. I mean, it is very tough and very rigid right now, so I don't think it's gonna have any problems. Ideally, like I mentioned in my last video, and I had good suggestions for how to take that away, which I'll probably end up doing anyway. So I appreciate the comments. But for now, it's just there. So yeah, continuing, this is old news here. We're gonna put plywood on top of this. I also had a suggestion of putting plywood against the back here, like thin plywood. maybe 1/4 inch, just to give it a nice flat surface. And it also holds all of this together so it doesn't sag or anything like that. But more importantly, when I put the backdrop, in my last layout, I had bracing like this, and what ended up happening is when it got hot, the hardboard kind of did this. It was like waves, so because it had no support back there. So I think by putting wood there, it'll give it a nice strong background to be, so I can glue it onto there and screw it in. Moving on. This you saw already, but I did put the plywood, which is exactly what it's going to look like throughout all this. That's the transition here. And this came out nice because I was able to make a nice flat surface here for the Homaso to transition on. I did pull it away as much as possible, and I tied all of this together. So this is, again, super stiff. And it gives me a nice straight shot here before it goes into a turn. So this curve here is basically going to allow me to start my yard here on the second level. So this is where the spur is going to start. Then I'm going to have maybe like a curved turnout, and then it's going to open up. Maybe just 4 tracks. I can't go too big here because I want as long yard as possible before I have to close it up again on the throat on the other side. So that's what's happening here. Now, I started this, and again, same situation. I just ran out of wood, but I did complete all this. And this is single track here. This is not double main. I might go double. I'm not sure yet, but I figured that's a big enough siding for trains to wait before they get in here. And anyway, there's going to be a yard here, so there might be like another long track that a train can kind of sneak into if it needs to. I don't know yet. But yeah, so I had run out of. I finished the cleat here, but I ran out of the rest of the wood to kind of pull everything forward like I did here to give me space for scenery back here. So yeah, a lot of progress, and it's all set up basically to continue here. So now I know what height I need to match, which is exactly what I measured for over here. So that's still at 22 in this situation above, the other one. I think in my last video, the one thing I forgot to mention about how, the height of the second level is that not only do I like layouts that, when they're multi-level, that are high enough so you can see clearly into the bottom level, but I also, I had to take into consideration that this is climbing. This track right here is climbing the whole time. So by the time you get here, it starts to, it's closing up. So 22 inches, even though it's very high, it doesn't seem high because this is so high. This is so far off the main benchwork here. So I didn't want the benchwork to be, right on top of this track. So that's why I wanted to make sure it was high. And that's how I got the measurement for the helix, because I wanted to make sure I had enough height and it wasn't going to make this look silly down here with this, with the height difference for the spline. So I think that's enough height there. I actually didn't measure what that height from the spline to the top of the cleat is, but it looks to the eye like it's enough. It's not going to be perfect, but I mean, ideally I'd like this to be even higher, but then, I'm going to be at the ceiling. Plus there's a third level that needs to come in here. It's going to be sitting about 1.5 feet, higher than that one. So it's going to come in right through there so that I can make my reverse loop with the helix. Obviously it's higher than this it should be 8 inches. So, I'm going to have to it's going to be higher, and then it's going to have to drop as we go. But that's for the future. Okay, so that's that. Now, the last thing I wanted to show you is this is what I was talking about. This is not related to the layout at all, but what I realized was that I was going to be in a situation with the cable guy because we're switching to Verizon Fios, and they got to put a box in that closet. So, when I first designed the whole layout, I wanted this to be detachable. So this is going to be just like a lift out section. Originally it was going to be a gate, but this is not going to be moved as much as that because that's the laundry room. So we constantly need to get in there. So that's why I made a gate there. But here, I don't need to get in there unless it's like an emergency or something like what I'm talking about right now. The only thing I go in there for is when a circuit blows, and I just gotta, all I want to do is I just duck under, and I left space here so I can stand here comfortably and flip the switches. So that's why I decided to go with lift out sections. There's gonna be 3 of them rather than gates, because gates are tricky with the angles and they warp and that stuff. I'm already worried about the other one doing that, so I don't want any more headaches than I need. So basically it's gonna be permanent. I am gonna bolt here, to make sure everything's rigid. I'm going to make sure that everything that is connecting to the track is going to be as almost permanent as possible, so I don't have to worry about track misalignment or anything like that. Anyways, so long story short, the cable guy had to get in there. So what I did is I cut the Homasote, as you can see, right here and right there. In fact, I still have the piece. Sorry about the mess, by the way. This is pretty bad. I'm doing a lot of things at once, and I'm gutting the second floor while I'm doing all this at the same time. So it's just crazy. So yeah, so this is what I cut out here. It was super easy to cut. I basically just eyeballed it, and I took my my cheap what do you call that thing? Saw, table saw, whatever it's called. That's not a table saw. I forget what it's called. Anyways, and I just cut. I just went, okay, the track's gotta be around here somewhere because it's gotta line up with this thing, and then I'm gonna have a piece of wood here. So I just went zoop, and I cut it. It came out really straight. I had to do very minimal, just shaving, just so that it wouldn't kick this piece of wood out. But basically, what I did is I squared it off with this piece of wood. But before I did that, I braced it by putting a flat piece of wood here, 1x4, and then attaching it here and here. So now, there's no movement for this thing. It's almost like a table for the Homasote. And then from the bottom, I drilled a few screws up into the Homasote, which makes it super firm. And then I also went from the outside and put one this way. So there's no movement this way. So this thing's not going anywhere. And then this is temporary, obviously. Let me just get this out of the way again. This is temporary, so what's gonna happen is once I get my actual bridge built and everything, then I'm gonna build, the abutments or whatever you call them, so that they're here somewhere, and then the scenery is gonna kind of drop down into the valley here. This I'm gonna take out and flatten it. Or I'm just gonna put a piece of plywood all the way across the bottom of this so that I have depth to make, the water scene, river or whatever it is. And the same thing on the other side, obviously. So this piece of wood is just so I can run the track temporarily and make the connection so I can test. But what I had to do was, because I have to make a connection just for the actual unit with the lift out section, I scattered these so that the track has just support all the way through. And same thing over there. So these two pieces are glued and screwed, but not to this one. This is glued to that section. So that's where the separation is, you can see right there. And same thing here. So now when I remove this, oops, my pencil. What I'm left with is, let me just see where I can put this down because I have no room. What I'm left with is that. So, the bridge is going to be, the actual bridge is going to be within this section. And then there's going to be, the transition into the layout. I didn't want to take the bridge all the way to the edge of that because that, it's plastic. It's not something that's very firm. So that's like asking for trouble if I put the bridge right up to here. So I'd rather have a real solid, foundation before I start the actual model bridge to go across. And that's how I did it. So like I said, I'm going to try to make this as solid as possible, but now, now the guy can get in here and work without any problems. And this is just a matter of putting it aside. And then just when he's done, just pop it back in, make sure it's aligned, and done. So, I think that's solid enough. And like I said, there's going to be bolts, and I might even put some latches somewhere to kind of pull it all together, because you know the tendency is for it to kind of pull apart a little bit. So I want to make sure that, I guess the bolts will pull it together anyway and align it at the same time. But I might put a piece of wood up here, like, you know, attached to this, so that the lip kind of sandwiches all this together. You know, it's not perfect, but this is very flat right now, and it's not going to be a problem to get, you know, track on there without any issues, derailment or anything like that. So that's basically the last thing I've been kind of working on. A few more odds and ends here and there, but overall that's what I've been trying to get completed. So the next step I'm going to try now, because in the last video I said this was going to be the next step, but I ran out of time, and then you know, the whole thing with the cable, so I had to kind of jump and go into this, and I got a little busy anyway, so I didn't have as much time to be down here. Oh, one last thing is, my creeper finally got here. It was $30 from Harbor Freight. It was on sale and clearance. So, you know, for $30, who cares? It's, you know, all it's got to do is go from there to there. So that's how I get into my wiring panel here. And it's really easy. All I got to do is, you know, sit down on it, lean back, and then just roll in, and then just sit up again. And it actually acts as a seat for me to work on this anyway. So it's convenient. Eventually I'm going to mount that, and I'm going to make like a case or just do something nice in there. And then I'll have lights, because, you know, this is going to be all covered by a mountain. So there's not going to be any lighting down there. So I will have lighting just to, you know, so I can work in there without any issues. So that is it. I look forward to basically completing my second level. I mean, once I get to here, I'm in business with the second level, at least to just run the main line. All the spurs and the yard and all that stuff that can come later. But I'm excited to at least get that going. Oh, by the way, I'm not sure if I showed you guys these, but I did pick up some new equipment here. I got these Atlas Masterline. They're the new ones that came out. CP auto racks, which are beautiful. And I picked up some container cars. Oh, I guess I did show you this, because I was talking about trying to get this to clear the spacing here in the helix, which obviously, if you saw my other video, clears perfectly. So I'm super psyched. I love the way they look. I'm going to try to pick up a few more. They're just very expensive. But, you know, I'm going to try to kind of build my rolling stock, my modern rolling stock, up a little bit more, while I, you know, empty out my bank account on the rest of the layout with all this stuff. Good news is I have my job for next year is guaranteed, because the budget passed, and as a teacher you depend on the budget very much. So that's good, because I was a little worried about not having my job next year. All right, so that's basically it. This is number 13, and I'll see you on number 14. Thanks for watching.